Welcome back to the Barely News Script, and I'm your host here as always, Alexis, and today we're reviewing the latest from Marvel Studios, Ant-Man. And yes, that's an actual movie. Ant-Man stars Paul Rudd as Scott Lang, Evangeline Lilly as Hope Pym, and Michael Douglas as Hank Pym, and is directed by Peyton Reed. Ant-Man takes place in San Francisco, which congratulations San Francisco for being so popular in films this year. Ant-Man revolves around the titular character Scott Lang, who is a skilled thief and loves his daughter more than anything else in the world. We find out that Scott was being watched by Hank Pym, who sees interest in his burglar abilities and recruits him to be the man in the suit to stop this ignorant billionaire from selling an adapted version of the Ant-Man suit. Now, the Ant-Man suit actually shrinks the person who happens to be wearing it down to the size of an ant. This is a Marvel movie, and those typically tend to have a lot of action. So with that being said, how on earth could they have pulled this off into a live-action movie? I mean, on paper, this just sounds like a lost cause, but it worked. And it seems so effortlessly that it was no surprise that this came from the same studio that took something so obscure like Guardians of the Galaxy and turned that into a box office hit. Even though it's best to not take this movie all that seriously, you don't really need to. This movie is silly. This movie is stupid. But it's stupid good, and it knows that. Part of why I feel that way is due to the on-point humor that kept a pretty consistent tone throughout the entire movie. I have to say that this is probably Marvel's most hilarious film to date, and I'm not even joking. I was almost in tears throughout the majority of this film. The characters may come across as stereotypical, but their likability really dismisses that concern in my view. Even though Scott Lang may not be all that unique of a character, the fact that he does everything for his daughter and the fact that Paul Rudd really brought Lang to life makes him impossible to not like. Evangeline Lilly as Hope Pym is another likable character that doesn't have much to do, but is a smart choice to serve as a foil to Scott. While the resolution to her feelings towards her father were extremely rushed, I do feel those two were great on screen together. In my view, Michael Douglas really stole this movie, certainly in terms of acting. His presence was needed. He brings that level of seriousness this kind of movie needed. You can just tell he loved playing that character, and his acting moments were the best, and those glasses were freaking amazing. Right? I mean, those glasses are just great. Did you see the glasses that he had? I love them. Now, someone else who steals this movie in every scene he's in from a comedy perspective is Michael Pena. He is the embodiment of the humor this movie immersed itself with, and the audience is really enchanted and entertained every time he comes on screen. Now, the villain, Darren Cross, is the weakest element in this film. As with the majority of Marvel movies, the villain isn't all that interesting. And even though it was a serviceable performance by Corey Stoll, I found it to be perfectly acceptable. As far as Marvel movies are concerned, they as a studio know what kind of movies they want to make. And I just want to say that after so many superhero movies, they do a pretty stellar job of not giving us the same kind of movie year after year. This movie in particular was another example of how Marvel delves into these subgenres. It really was a heist/comedy movie within the superhero genre. This is a good, fun heist movie that has some pretty entertaining Avengers tie-ins. I'm your host here as always, Alexis, and remember, you're always welcome to the Barely News Crew, the place for all things movie news and reviews.